Now, there have been quite a lot of notable advances in bike tech this year, and GTN has been lucky enough to get a first-hand glimpse at much of it. So I thought what would be a fun thing to do would be to have a roundup of a lot of those top pro bikes and what in particular caught my eye. Now I'm gonna get things started with a bike that isn't actually a triathlon bike, but bear with me a second, because you see, at the end of October, British Cycling launched their brand new collaboration between Lotus and Hope, and it is a track bike that they're gonna launch ahead of the Tokyo Olympics next year. And this bike turned an awful lot of heads, in particular because of its cutting edge designs, mostly with the shapes regarding the seat stays and of course the fork. Now, for those of you who follow triathlon, this perhaps wouldn't have been such a surprise, because at the end of last year, Specialized launched their S-Works Shiv disc, which had some incredibly different designs, especially with the shape of its fork. It was a complete game changer. We had a first look at this bike at the beginning of the season when Tim Dong kindly talked us through his steed, and he explained that once the move had been made away from traditional rim brakes over to disc brakes, then obviously there was no need for that traditional brake caliper that you see on forks. So what that allowed Specialized to do with the design of the fork was extend that all the way up to the bottom of the base bar, and that, in Tim's opinion, gives a much more stable and responsive handling sensation of the bike.
When they took away the need for a caliper, then they can redesign the fork, so they've just gone straight up. It's obviously a lot wider, but it's the way it's designed, it's more stable in the crosswinds, which at the front end is very important.
And the biggest thing I can see as well, obviously sitting right here in front of it, is it comes all the way up to the base bar.
That's it, it doesn't taper in, it can just go straight up, so there's massive advantage there.
And how does that affect the handling?
You know what, in the aerobars, not at all. You know, it took a while to get used to when I was on the base bar, but for me, I think it was going from a rim brake to a disc brake. They're just so responsive and sharp, and you don't expect that on a time trial bike. So, but no, on the whole, I've ridden it in Kona, I've ridden it in Lanzarote, two of the windiest places around, and touch wood, haven't fallen off.
So since we're at the front end of the bike, I thought we should look at the cockpit now, and what actually caught my eye here? Well, I've got a couple examples for you. Now, when the athletes are looking to improve their aerodynamics, there's all sorts of extras that they will go to. And the next level in terms of customization usually involves their aerobars these days. And what David has got here is called the speed bar, and this is essentially custom molded to fit his specific position and his forearms in particular. Now, these things certainly don't come cheap, but when athletes at this level are looking to find those extra percentages and gains, this is the sort of tech that they're willing to invest in. Now, moving things on to another level yet again is what we saw on Cameron Worth's bike in Hawaii back in October. Now, whereas the speed bar that David has is molded in a cast, similar to what you might have had if you've broken a bone at hospital perhaps, well, these bars on Cameron's bike are 3D printed by a company called Most, and quite how they do that, I'm not entirely sure to fit the exact position of the arms, but either way, it looks incredibly sleek, and it certainly should, with the rumored cost of these being somewhere in the region of $12,000. Now, one final extreme version of the cockpit is what we saw at the Norseman Extra event this summer, where Mark was racing, and we had a chat to multiple winner of that event, Alan Hovda, and about his rather bizarre MorphTech aerobars.
Yeah, the MorphTech handlebars, they're quite, I would say, unique.
Yeah.
In terms that you don't have a base bar. The aero bars are both aero bars and base bars.
And you literally just, what you've done there is just pulled them out, and there's no mechanism or locking. That just action was you just moving your hands down, wasn't it?
Yes, and then they lock in this position. So to get them back as aero bars, you have to press both the levers. And
so you push both those levers at the same time, and
yes.
Hey presto, we've got a really, really aero system again.
Yes.
Now, sticking with the aerodynamics theme, but now moving on to group sets, because at Challenge Roth, I was really interested to look at the particular group set that German powerhouse Andy Bocherer was using on his Cube TT, because at that time, it was the first time I had come across 12-speed SRAM Axis 1x on a race bike. Now, fast forward to Hawaii in October, and yet again I saw this setup on Tim Reed's Trek Speed concept, highlighting that more and more athletes were willing to put this type of race setup on their bikes. Now, we saw some impressive wheel sets at the races on our travels this summer, but I'm not actually gonna just talk about one wheel set here. I'm gonna be a little bit greedy and talk about 3 different sets of rims that stood out for me. And first up is the wheel set that Cameron Worth had on his bike in Challenge Roth this summer. Now, these Princeton Carbon Works wheels were largely unfamiliar to us here on the channel, and in Roth he had a shallow front rim coupled with a rear disc wheel. But later in the season at Ironman Hawaii, he'd swapped this rear disc out for a similar depth rear rim to match that front, and Mark actually talked about these rims in quite a bit more detail here.
Now down from that, we've got the Princeton Carbon Works wheels, which I'm going to be totally honest, it's not a brand I'm all that familiar with. We've seen Team Ineos riding on them for the past year. In fact, Cam's been riding on them for the past season. Fraser actually featured them upon Cam's bike earlier this year at Challenge Roth. Now, quite excitedly, it was actually set up by 2 rowers, which is a nice link there between Cam and the brand. But you'll probably notice they've got quite a unique shape to them and profile. And the idea behind this is that they're continually offloading pressure that can build up on wheels. What we ordinarily see on a normal set of wheels is that air passing over can build up in pressure, and then when that finally offloads, it can really jolt the rider. So the idea is it's continually offloading that, which is absolutely perfect for a race like this at the Ironman World Championships, where we can sometimes get really strong crosswinds.
And secondly, it was the DT Swiss rear disc choice of American rider Rudy von Berg that caught my eye. And if truth be told, it was actually the recognizable design of a lightweight wheel with the DT Swiss decals added on top that I really noticed, because as Mark explains, there isn't actually a rear disc made by DT Swiss, so we assumed that this must be some sort of collaboration between these 2 brands.
Now moving on to the wheels, and Rudy is a DT Swiss ambassador. So on the front we've got the DT Swiss Arc 1100 die cut wheel, and then on the rear we have a DT Swiss disc, but I'm sure many of you know that DT Swiss don't actually do their own disc wheel. You may also recognise the fairly obvious design. It is a lightweight disc, only vinyled up with DT Swiss on it. Now, DT Swiss do supply a lot of bearings to other wheel manufacturers, so I can only imagine they've sourced it from lightweight and put their own decals on.
And finally, another sleek looking disc wheel that I hadn't actually come across until we were in Oceanside in April is the Roval disc that is on Sarah True's Shiv disc tri-bike. Now, Roval are the subsidiary brand to Specialized, and until this season hadn't seen any of their athletes riding on these particular disc wheels, and certainly coupled with the turbo cotton tires that Specialized have on these, I would say it's a very head-turning set of wheels for their top athletes to be racing on. Now, it's taken me a while, but now I'm finally getting on to one of my favorite aspects of any bike, and that is the frame sets. Now, the top pros often get the perks of getting their frames jazzed up for the very biggest events, and Ironman Hawaii generally throws up some very unique paint jobs indeed. And the Trek Project 1 option that Trek offer anyone who's buying one of their frame sets was particularly well highlighted by Tim Reed's bike in Kona, and you can see me struggling to find the correct description rather of the chrome decals here.
So the Trek Factory Racing athletes here in Kona are all going to be running this very, very swish black with, I guess I'm going to call it metallic, shiny silver decals, which I just think look really poppy and stand out. So this one is going to be something that turns some heads on race day.
Now, Argon took this to a whole nother level on the Big Island with their offering for their rider Heather Jackson, because not only did they provide a thermochromic paint job that changed colour with the temperature, but it was also inlaid with some motivational quotes that meant something to her that became visible as that paintwork changed, and I'd say that was pretty damn cool if you ask me. Now, this has been lots of fun getting to go back through all of our videos to find out what it was that really stood out for me, and it's almost as if I was able to create my own GTN superbike amalgamation. So hopefully you've enjoyed this as much as I have, so please hit that thumb up like button, find the globe on screen to make sure you get all the other videos on our channel. And if you want to see that bike I talked about that was Cam Worth versus Bockerer, well, you can find that here. And the Tim Dawn Pro bike that I mentioned in this video too can be found here.